Bev would have liked that cake. So, everybody's had a chance probably to look at the book. It took me 8 years to write it, and it's not that I'm that slow, but it's, hi, Mary Jones Head. But it changed. It started out just as a very simple family memoir. I wrote a memoir about my mother-in-law here, Flo, and her club, Les Amis. It was just a little paperback book, and it was just for family. But I had such a good time doing it, I thought, well, I think I'll write something about my family. So I started just jotting down feelings I had about my family, and especially Bev and our experiences with her. And I talked to Carol Hillard, who was case manager at the Threshold, where Bev was living in a group home, and we used to go for meetings, and she said, you know, there are records from Penhurst, which is the state hospital where Bev was. And I said, no, I didn't know there were records. So Greg drove me down to Norristown State Hospital, and I looked at the records there. And when I saw them, I couldn't believe it, what I was seeing. And so I learned so much about her and the place and all the things my parents never told us, never talked about. In those days, people they weren't very open with their children about things, and we didn't know. So I told Johnny, and my brother Greg's here, my sister Johnny, and they were surprised too to hear these things. Like, they never knew. So then I started putting those in to the book, so this is becoming like a hodgepodge of all sorts of things. Every time I would go down and look at the records, I'd learn more. And it was really hard to get to see them. They wouldn't let you in very often, like a couple of times a year. You could go down there. They were kept in this horrible, old, dusty, awful building. And I wore my old, I always said, just wear old clothes because you're going to get dirty and filthy. The records for all these people who lived at Penhurst are in like cardboard boxes and filing cabinets and just lying all over the place. They aren't well kept at all. So I got the records and looked through them. Make a long story short, it took me about 3 years to get through those records, only going a couple times a year. So then, after I read those things, I said, you know, I would really like to know more about why things were that way. And so I started doing some research about the laws and how, and just the medical field, how primitive it was, and how little they had to work with, how few drugs they had, how few methods they had to work with intellectually disabled children and adults. So Bev, and some of you probably don't even know, my sister Bev was intellectually disabled and went into Penhurst when she was 9 years old and stayed there for 32 years in an institution. So when I found all that out, then I put that in. So I wound up with this big hodgepodge of stuff that I had to put together. So it took me a long time to get it all put in one package. So that's why it took 8 years. It wasn't that it's the great masterpiece of the century, and it took me 8 years to get every word perfect. But that's why. So here it is, and it's really exciting for me to have my first, Les Amis was my first book, but we didn't make that much fuss about it. It was just for family, but this is my first public book. And I think that this book can be read by people not only in the field of dealing with intellectually disabled, but anybody who is interested in how we treat other people in this world, both personally and in society. So, I would like first first, I might read a little bit to you, but first I just want to thank all the people, and I'm going to check my acknowledgements page just to make sure. There's so many people that helped out with the book. Of course, Les Amis, they helped me. And Carol Hillard, who I was hoping would be here, but hasn't arrived yet at this point, who was, as I said, the case manager. The gal who helped me with the records, Kathy O'Rourke Reese, who went out on a limb to let me use those records to the extent I did. I think I actually got her in a little trouble. I thanked her in front of somebody that I shouldn't have thanked her in front of, because he didn't know she was doing that. And of course, Greg and Johnny. And the Greater Lehigh Valley Writers Group, who let me find Bart. Where's Bart? He's back there. There's Bart, who made the book a book from my digital copy. And for Hannah, who did this beautiful cover, the concept, and then Bart made it happen. Greg Kierman, who again, I wish he were here, but he hasn't arrived yet anyway, from the Pennsylvania Memorial and Preservation Alliance, who are trying to get the Pennhurst Museum established and preserve the memories of the people who were in Pennhurst. Also Carl Williams, who wrote a book with Roland Johnson called Lost in the Desert World. Roland was a resident of Pennhurst for, I believe, 17 years, and I used some quotations from his book, and for Laverne Cheatham, his sister, who gave me permission as well. I also met a very lovely lady named Rachel Simon. She wrote a book called Riding the Bus with My Sister. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. There was a Hallmark Hall of Fame movie, TV movie made of that book. And she was at Greg Pierman's book signing, and she has been so wonderful. I mean, she just has been so supportive, gave me so much. And we're still in contact, and again, she couldn't be here today because of other commitments. And to Carol, I'd like to thank her, even though she's not here, and to the people from Threshold, Mohammed, who took care of Bev and was with her up till the end, and Artie, her housemate. Hi, Artie.
Has a watch on today.
Yeah, you have your watch. All right. And Mary, who's new to the house, and Andres, that I just met today. And they all are such wonderful people who gave her her second family. So,
Excuse me, I also worked with Bev. I'm Anne Marie Petrillo.
oh, you're in, okay. I didn't see you come in. Carol told me all about you. All right.
I worked with Bev on Washington Avenue and on McKnight Street a long time ago.
That was a long time ago, and that was before I really was so involved with Bev's. I was off doing my own thing.
Yeah, about 6 years or so.
It's a long
Quite a while
time ago.
ago.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to talk to you later. Yes, that's
Very
great.
nice to meet you.
Yeah. The people from Threshold, you know, they're just wonderful, wonderful people. Can't say enough about them and the work they do. So I don't want to go on for too long, but I'll just read a little bit. This is from Chapter 6, Decline and Fall. After Bev became a resident of Pennhurst State School, our family changed forever. She was still a daughter and a sister in the Miller family, but she was no longer part of our day-to-day home life. Our daily routines went on without her, and the gaps left by her departure were quickly filled. For us children, though Bev may have been sorely missed at first, I don't believe it really took much time for us to learn to be without her. Children are resilient. They accept what happens to them when they are young because they don't know anything else. It takes a long time for them to find out about what goes on in the rest of the world. We didn't understand that our situation was unusual. So it was that once Bev went away and we became intimately acquainted with the world of Pennhurst, we accepted it. We had no idea that most people would never see such a place or even know such a place existed. For us, however, it was a powerful childhood lesson. We found out at an early age that nightmares are real, and some people live them every day. We thought it was normal. So if you have never read about, or I doubt many of you have been to a place like Pennhurst, it will be a revelation to you about what it was like. Not a happy revelation, unfortunately. A lot of people have said when they read this book, not a lot of people have read it, but some have, and they said it was sad. And it is sad, because how can it not be? But I hope that when you're done, that it will be a happy feeling of hope, because we all survived. And she did. And she had a happy life at the end of her life. She had 32 years in Pennhurst, and after that, she had a good life because of people like Muhammad and Anne and the others who gave her a good life. It's a lesson in how to treat our fellow man. And in this country today, where we seem to be getting some unkind directions that we're going in, this book, I hope, will remind people how we should treat people. Now, I just want to share with you, because it is a sad book, but there's a funny story, and I want to share that with you. Johnny and I. One day, several years ago, Johnny and I visited Bev at her group home on her birthday. As a treat, we took her to dinner at a local restaurant. Bev loves food and enjoys going out to eat and choosing her own menu. For most of her adult life, Bev had a weight issue, and at the time of this particular outing, she was still quite heavy. Despite the weight, she could move very quickly and tended to be a bit of a bull in a china shop. People who knew her were prepared to get out of her way, but people who were not could be caught off guard by her linebacker approach. We had a pleasant dinner together, and the waitstaff were especially attentive to Bev. Before we left the restaurant, we took turns going to the restroom. I went first, then returned to the table and computed the tip, while Johnny and Bev went to the bathroom. After a few minutes, I heard a ruckus going out in the lobby. I had an ominous feeling about the noise, and jumped up from the table to investigate. This restaurant was the type at which patrons paid their bill at a cash register on the way out. As Johnny and Bev were coming out of the ladies' room, they needed to walk right by the register. Unfortunately, at that very moment, a customer was getting her change after paying her bill, and there were a couple of quarters lying on the counter. Now, anyone who knows Bev knows that is her favorite thing, quarters. Before Johnny could blink, Bev, nearly 200 pounds of her, charged at the counter to scoop up the quarters, knocking down a waitress in the process. As soon as she realized what she had done, Bev began wailing, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry." I jumped in to help Johnny comfort Bev, then picked up the waitress and apologized profusely for the incident.
She wanted her tips still. All the money flew out of the waitress's apron, and she wanted to take the money, and the waitress was
Luckily, no one was injured, and everyone was very understanding about the whole event. Johnny ushered Bev outside while I paid the bill and made sure everyone was okay. The waitress was wonderful. She got up and brushed herself off and insisted that we not make a fuss. I left a generous tip with no quarters and went outside to join Bev and Johnny in the parking lot. One look at each other and we burst out laughing. We couldn't help it. Bev, in her usual childlike fashion, forgot all about it as soon as we were in the car, and we all went home and had birthday cake. From then on, when we took Bev anywhere, we double-teamed her and kept a sharp eye out for loose change. So, as I said, the people who know Bev, they know. Quarters. So, now I would like just to briefly show the slideshow that we did at her memorial service, and then we will cut the cake, and I will be there to sign more books. So hopefully, technology will be with us. That's the last picture I ever had on her last Christmas. Okay.
Then